Welcome back to Major Antonio's presentation of The Story of Extinct Civilizations of the West by Robert E. Anderson. Chapter 9, Extinct Civilization of Peru.
As the extinct civilization of the Incas of Peru is the most important phase of development among all the American races, so also their prehistoric remains are extremely interesting to the archaeologist. 1. Architecture. In the interior of the country, we find many remarkable examples of stone building, such as walls of huge polygonal stones, 4-sided or 5-sided or 6-sided, some 6 feet across, laid without mortar, and so finely polished and adjusted that the blade of a knife cannot be inserted between them. The strength of the masonry is sometimes assisted by having the projecting parts of a stone fitting into corresponding hollows or recesses in the stone above or below it. The stones being frequently extremely hard granite or basalt, etc., antiquarian travelers have wondered how in early times the natives could have cut and polished them without any metal tools. The ordinary explanation is that the work was done by patiently rubbing one stone against another with the aid of sharp sand, time being no object in the case of the laborers among savage and primitive races. It is believed by most antiquaries that long before the period of the Incas there was a powerful empire to which we must attribute such cyclopean ruins, especially as the construction and style differ so greatly from what is found in the Inca period. The huge stones occur at Tiahuanacu, near Lake Titicaca, Cusco, Ollantay, and the altar of Concacha. Some older historians speak of richly carved statues which formerly stood in this enclosure, and many cylindrical pillars. Of the masonry of these ruins generally, Squeer says, "The stone is faced with a precision that no skill can excel, its right angles turned with an accuracy that the most careful geometer could not surpass. I do not believe there exists a better piece of stone cutting, the material considered, on this or the other continent." The fortress above Cusco, the capital of the Incas, is considered the grandest monument of extinct American civilization. Like the pyramids and the Colosseum, it is imperishable. A fortified work, 600 yards in length, built of gigantic stones, in 3 lines, forming walls supporting terraces and parapets. The stones are of blue limestone, of enormous size and irregular in shape, but fitted into each other with rare precision. One stone is 27 feet high by 14, and others 15 feet high by 12 are common throughout the work. In all the architecture of the prehistoric Peruvians, the true arch is not found, though there is an approach to the Maya arch formerly described, finishing the doorway overhead by overlapping stones. The immense fortresses of Ollantay and Pisac are really hills which, by means of encircling walls, have been transformed into immense pyramids with many terraces rising above each other. All large buildings, such as temples and palaces, were laid out to agree with the cardinal points, the principal entrance always facing the rising sun. The tomb construction of the ancient Peruvians has been already noticed. To the south of Cusco are the ruins of a temple, Cacha, which is considered to be of a date between the cyclopean structures already described and the Inca architecture. The chief part is 110 yards long, built of wrought stones, and in the middle of the building from end to end runs a wall pierced by 12 high doorways. There were also 2 series of pillars which had formerly supported a floor. Those traces of the cyclopean builders point to an extremely early date, but several students of the Peruvian antiquities point confidently to distinct evidence of a still more primitive race to be compared, perhaps, with those builders of Druidic monuments, whom it is now the fashion to call Neolithic men. Some cromlechs, or burial places, have been found in Bolivia and other parts of Peru, and in many respects they are parallel to the stone monuments found in Great Britain as well as Brittany and other parts of Europe. Some of those Peruvian cromlechs consist of 4 great slabs of slate, each about 5 feet high, 4 or 5 in width, and more than an inch thick. A 5th is placed over them. Over the whole a pyramid of clay and rough stones is piled. Possibly that race of cromlech builders bore the same relation to the temple builders described above that the builders of Kit's Cody House between Rochester and Maidstone bore to the temple builders of Stonehenge on Salisbury Plain. If they had to retreat, as the ice sheet was driven farther from the torrid zone, then by the theory of the glacial period, the cromlech men in both cases would at last be simply Eskimos. 2. Aqueducts. The ancient Peruvians attained great skill in the distribution of water, especially for irrigation. Artificial lakes or reservoirs were formed, so that by damming up the streams in the rainy season, a good supply was created for the dry season. Some great monuments still remain of their hydraulic engineering, such as extensive cisterns, solid dikes along the rivers to prevent overflow, tunnels to drain lakes during an oversupply, and in some places, artificial cascades. 3. Roads and bridges. The roads and highways of the Incas were so excellent that, in many places, they still offer by far the most convenient avenues of transit. They are from 15 to 25 feet in width, bedded with small stones often laid in concrete. As the use of beasts of burden was almost unknown, the roads did not ascend a steep inclination by zigzags, but by steps cut in the rock. At certain distances, public shelters were erected for travelers, and some of these still offer the best lodging houses to be found along the routes. Bridges were of wood, of ropes made from maguey fiber, or of stone. Some of the latter are still in excellent condition, in spite of the violence of the mountain torrents which they have spanned for 4 centuries. 4. Sculpture. The Maya race of Yucatan and Central America were much superior to the prehistoric Peruvians in stone sculpture. Except those examples already referred to under 1, their artists have apparently produced nothing to show skill in workmanship, much less fertility of imagination. That is largely explained by their lack of suitable tools. 5. Goldsmiths' work. In this branch of art, the ancient Peruvians greatly excelled, especially in inlaying and gilding. Gold beating and gilding had been prosecuted to remarkable delicacy, and the very thin layers of gold leaf on many articles led the Spaniards at first to believe they were of the solid metal. These delicate layers showed ornamental designs, including birds, butterflies, and the like. 6. Pottery. In this department of industrial art, the prehistoric Peruvians showed much aptitude both in regard to variety of design and technical skill in preparing the material. Vases with pointed bottoms and painted sides recalling those of ancient Greece and Etruria are often disinterred along the coast. The merit of those artists lay in perfect imitation of natural objects, such as birds, fishes, fruits, plants, skulls, persons in various positions, faces, often with graphic individuality. Some jars exactly resembled the magic vases, which are still found in Hindustan and can be emptied only when held at a certain angle. 7. Though ignorant of perspective and the rules of light and shade, these ancient Peruvians had an accurate eye for color. Spinning, weaving, and dyeing, to quote Sir C.R. Markham, were arts which were sources of employment to a great number, owing to the quantity and variety of the fabrics. There were rich dresses interwoven with gold or made of gold thread, fine woolen mantles ornamented with borders of small square plates of gold and silver, colored cotton cloths worked in complicated patterns, and fabrics of aloe fiber and sheep's sinews for breeches. Coarser cloths of llama wool were also made in vast quantities. 8. The quipu, i.e., knot. Without writing or even any of the simpler forms of pictographs which some Indian races inferior to them in refinement had invented, the Peruvians had no means of sending a message relating to tribute or the number of warriors in an army, or a date, except the quipu. It consisted of one principal cord about 2 feet long held horizontally, to which other cords of various colors and lengths were attached, hanging vertically. The knots on the vertical cords and their various lengths served by means of an arranged code to convey certain words and phrases. Each color and each knot had so many conventional significations. Thus white equals silver, green equals corn, yellow equals gold. But in another quipu, white equals peace, red equals war, soldiers, etc. The quipu was originally only a means of numeration and keeping accounts. Thus, a single knot equals 10, a double knot equals 100, a triple knot equals 1,000, 2 singles equals 20, 2 doubles equals 200, etc. 9. The great stone monuments described in our first section belonged, according to some writers, to a dynasty called Perua, who ruled over the highlands of Peru and Bolivia long before the times of the Incas. That early race had as the center of their civilization the shores of Lake Titicaca. 10. The ancient capital. Cusco, the center of government till the time of the conquest by the Spaniards, and for a long time the only city in the Peruvian Empire, deserves a paragraph under the head Archaeology. Its wonderful fortress has already been referred to, and there are other Cyclopean remains, such as the Great Wall which contains the Stone of 12 Corners. Some monuments of the Inca period also attract much attention, such as the Curi Cancha Temple, 296 feet long, the Palace of Amaru Cancha, i.e., Place of Serpents, so called from the serpents sculptured in relief on the exterior. Of these and other buildings, Squire remarks that the joints are of a precision unknown in our architecture. The world has nothing to show in the way of stone cutting and fitting to surpass the skill and accuracy displayed in the Inca structures of Cusco. To obtain the site for their capital, the Incas had to carry out a great engineering work. By confining two mountain torrents between walls of substantial masonry so solid as to serve even to modern times. The valley of Cusco was the source of the Peruvian civilization, center and origin of the empire. Hence the name Cusco equals navel, just as the ancient Greeks called Athens umbilicus terra, and our New England cousins fondly refer to Boston, Massachusetts, as the hub of the universe. The national myth of the Peruvians was that at Lake Titicaca two supernatural beings appeared, both children of the sun. One was Manco Capac, the first Inca who taught the people agriculture. The other was his wife, who taught the women to spin and weave. From them were lineally derived all the Incas. As representing the sun, the Inca was high priest and head of the hierarchy, and therefore presided at the great religious festivals. He was the source from which everything flowed, all dignity, all power, all emolument. Louis le Magnifique, when at the height of his power, might be taken as a type of the Emperor Inca. Both could literally use the phrase, l'état c'est moi, the state. I am the state. In the royal palaces and dress great barbaric pomp was assumed. All the apartments were studded with gold and silver ornaments. The worship of the sun, representing the creator, the dweller in space, the teacher and ruler of the universe, was the religion of the Incas inherited from their distant ancestry. The great temple at Cusco, with its gorgeous display of riches, was called the Place of Gold, the abode of the teacher of the universe. An elliptical plate of gold was fixed on the wall to represent the deity. Sufficient evidence is still visible of the engineering industry evinced by the natives before the arrival of Pizarro. We give some particulars of the two principal highways, both joining Quito to Cusco, then passing south to Chile. First, the high-level road, 1,600 miles in length, crossing the great Peruvian tableland, and conducted over pathless sierras buried in snow, with galleries cut for leagues through the living rock, rivers crossed by means of bridges, and ravines of hideous depth, filled up with solid masonry. The roadway consisted of heavy flags of freestone. Secondly, the low-level highway along the coast country between the Andes and the Pacific. The prehistoric engineers had here to encounter quite a different task. The causeway was raised on a high embankment of earth, with trees planted along the margin. In the strips of sandy waste, huge piles, many of them to be seen to this day, were driven into the ground to indicate the route. Another colossal effort was the conveyance of water to the rainless country by the seacoast, especially to certain parts capable of being reclaimed and made fertile. Some of the aqueducts were of great length, one measuring between 400 and 500 miles. The following table gives the Peruvian calendar for a year. 1. Raymi, the festival of the winter solstice, in honor of the sun, June 22nd. Season of plowing, July 22nd. Season of sowing, August 22nd. 2. Festival of the spring equinox, September 22nd. Season of brewing, October 22nd. Commemoration of the dead, November 22nd. 3. Festival of the summer solstice, December 22nd. Season of exercises, January 22nd. Season of ripening, February 22nd. 4. Festival of autumn equinox, March 22nd. Beginning of harvest, April 22nd. Harvesting month, May 22nd. Since Quito is exactly on the equator, the vertical rays of the sun at noon during the equinox cast no shadow. That northern capital, therefore, was held in a special veneration as the favored abode of the great deity. At the feast of Raymi, or New Year's Day, the sacrifice usually offered was that of the llama, a fire being kindled by means of a concave mirror of polished metal, collecting the rays of the sun into a focus upon a quantity of dried cotton. The national festival of the Aztecs we compared to the secular celebration of the Romans. So now the Rami of the Peruvians may be likened to the Panathenaea of ancient Athens, when the people of Attica ascended in splendid procession to the shrine on the Acropolis. In Mexico, the Spanish travelers often experienced severe famines, and in India, even at the present day, to the disgrace perhaps of our management, nearly every year many thousands die of hunger. It was very different under the ancient Peruvians, because by law, the product of the lands consecrated to the sun, as well as those set apart for the Incas, was deposited in the tambos or public storehouses as a stated provision for times of scarcity. The Spaniards found those prehistoric agriculturists utilizing the inexhaustible supply of guano found on all the islands of the Pacific. It was not till the middle of the 19th century that the British farmer found the value of this fertilizer.
This concludes today's reading of The Story of Extinct Civilizations of the West by Robert E. Anderson. Join us also the day after tomorrow for the subsequent part. Subscribe to Major Antonio's channel. Thank you for listening, and so long.